everybody. Everybody who put up a decoration or made a cookie or handed a bulletin or just made any of the beautiful sounds, thank you so much. It's just a lot of wonderful. And it's awesome to see faces. This community, 21 years loving our family. We're so lucky. I love the video. I see you all in wrapping paper right now. Thank you. You look better without the wrapping paper, but your gifts. Thank you for the gift that you guys are. Um, yeah, our curriculum that we do with our kids takes us to the mountaintop today. And not like go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born, but the transfiguration, right? And so I was like, how do we do that and do the manger? So we're going to do both, okay? When I speak of the mountaintop, I'm going to go over here. And when I speak of the manger, I'm going to go over here. So follow the bouncing Bennie. So before I dive in, for those of you who guys like trailers, especially with spoiler trailers, or for the intellectuals among us, an abstract. We're going to give you the abstract first, okay? Here's the big idea that I hope you get today. God is awakening us to see glory, to see the image of God, to see original good in unexpected places. Mangers, mountaintops, low places, high places, all places, in humble people, in powerful people, in all people. And he's asking us, do you see what I see? So let's begin with the manger. Familiar story. I want us to take on some of the ignorance, perhaps. Have you ever told someone to do that? Be a little more ignorant with me. Because the thing is that sometimes we know too much to really experience a story, right? We know we're here. We have pictures of God incarnate on window glass and up here, and we know what we see. But imagine you're a shepherd, and you're just out there doing your job, right? If you were a trucker, maybe you would have been out there just changing the oil. If you were a weaver, you're out there just weaving. If you're an accountant, you're out there just doing the books, right? You're doing your normal everyday thing, and all of a sudden this unprecedented thing occurs, right? And it's unprecedented and beautiful and amazing and miraculous, but it gives you a very unexpected sign. The sign of a manger, a dog dish. If I were a trucker, this would be maybe the gas tank where I fill up my truck. Something so unspectacular in a cave. And so the shepherds have to trust that what they're hearing from God is really true. And so in the text, and we'll go to the text in Luke 2, they see the angels and they hear the sign. This will be the sign. You'll find a baby wrapped in clothes and lying in a manger, in a feeding trough. And they say to each other, well, what do we do? I mean, we heard this crazy thing. We're just out here doing our night job, and all of a sudden there's this news. What do we do? And they say, let's go. Let's go. Let's see. What's the worst thing that could happen, right? Let's go to Bethlehem, and we'll see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about. So they hurried off, and they found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the manger. And when they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had been told them about this child. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds told them, because it was amazing and yet so ordinary and so unspectacular. I think the story of this season, it's a story about ordinary people seeing something rather unimpressive, because the baby in here was a poor baby. He was politically oppressed. He was apparently illegitimate, and soon he would be a refugee seeking asylum in a neighboring country that had formerly been the slave-holding country for his people, Egypt. All kinds of bad news, but somehow he embodies good news. And these ordinary people, this ordinary on the surface baby, these ordinary shepherds are awakened to see that child in a whole new light, because the Lord told them about it. Could we have that same thing happen in our eyesight, where we allow messengers from God to sing us a story that transforms the way that we see? Because that's what happens for the shepherds. And there were these two miracles. The one miracle is everything that you heard in this skit about that was miraculous about Jesus. But might there be an even bigger miracle in the transformation of the vision of those shepherds? Which is the real miracle? The revelation of God in Jesus or the transformation of the vision of the disciples? I say yes to both. The song asks, do you see what I see? And the way they tell it, first it's the wind, right? The night wind says, do you see what I see? And then the little lamb says, ba 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 ba. You guys know that song, right? Do you see what I see? Little lamb says, shepherd boy, little lamb, do you see what I see? And finally it says, the mighty king, do you see what I see? So if God is with us, do we see it? Are we able to see it in this baby? Well, in the story, some people did see it. The shepherds saw it. The wise men saw it. In the temple, Simeon saw it, and Anna saw it, and they were privileged to see it and have that miracle happen in their eyes, in their hearts. And some did not see that glory. Some missed it. Herod and others. We're going to shift to the mountaintop. The Mount of Transfiguration. Never saw a connection between these two, but I've been thinking about it, and I'm seeing some things. And let's look at that scripture now, to Luke 9. So these disciples have been following Jesus, doing all kinds of adventures and apparent misadventures, sometimes really making people happy, sometimes really upsetting them. Sometimes saying things that were just inspiring, some things that were just really hard to hear and made you just want to walk away. And most recently, Peter has heard this word from Jesus that the Messiah is going to exit, as they put it in the skit, that he was going to die. And it's just not lining up. I mean, any more than this is a proper place for the king to be born. For a Messiah to exit by death does not line up with what he believes. And now he wants to take them on a walk on the mountain. Now, for us, we think of a walk on the mountain, of course. Well, that's what we go to Pine Springs Ranch for our retreat. Mountaintop experiences are where we feel closest to God. But if you think about a good Jew who remembers the history of their people, the mountaintops needed to have a little bit of suspicion. Because in Deuteronomy 12, this is the word. It says, destroy completely all the places on the high mountains, on the hills, and under every spreading tree, where the nations you are dispossessing worship their gods. They were told to break down their altars, smash their sacred stones, and burn their Asherah poles in the fire, cut down the idols of their gods, and wipe out their names from those places. Because you must not worship the Lord your God in that way on the mountain. But you are to seek the place the Lord your God will choose from you among all your tribes to put his name there for your dwelling. To that place you must go. So what was that place called that was set apart for worship for a good Jew? Jerusalem, right? In the what? Right, that's where you're going to go to see the Shekinah glory of God. That's where you're going to go to see the full revelation of the image of God. And so now Jesus is walking them up the mountain. Not necessarily a problem, but not necessarily like going to church or seeing something amazing. So when they get up there and they begin to see what they saw, he's praying and the appearance of his face is changed and his clothes become as bright as a flash of lightning. And Moses and Elijah appear in glorious splendor talking to Jesus, and they too speak of his departure, which he was about to bring to fulfillment in Jerusalem. And still, Peter and his companions are sleepy. I think about that sleepiness, man. Who feels a little sleepy right now? Please own it. Yes. Oh my goodness, the holidays are so exhausting. And it can be so beautiful that you just want to fall asleep and miss it. I mean, like these guys had hiked with Jesus, and they've got Moses and Elijah, and they're still like, catch you later, like wake me up Christmas morning. I'm tired. But somehow, and this is what I pray for today, is that there's an awakening. There's an eye-opening, and they see what they almost didn't see. The miracle, yes, that Elijah and Moses show up, total miracle. That Jesus shows up all white and beautiful and brilliant, but the miracle too, that their eyes were opened and they were awakened. When you look into the book of Acts, Acts 2, the early church, on the day of Pentecost, the miracle we always think of is the gift of what was given to the people? tongues, right? Because they could speak and they could speak all these different languages. But when you read it, and Graham Maxwell is the first one that pointed this out. I love Graham Maxwell. And the people are utterly amazed, and they ask, aren't these Galileans who are speaking? Then how is it that each of us hears them in our native language? So is it the gift of tongues, or is it the gift of ears? At the manger, it's the gift of Jesus, of course, and is it also the gift of the eyes to see divinity in that little baby? On the mountaintop, the gift of glory, but also the eyes and the awakeness to see the glory that's there. At Pentecost, the gift of tongues and the gift of ears. Which one is it? Yes, it's both. So, teacher, carpenter, vagabond, storyteller, friend, rebel, glorious Son of God. They finally saw it. And Peter, we give him such a hard time. I was thinking I want to have like a legal defense fund for Peter because he's the one that at least had the guts to get out of the boat, right? And like he said, at least he said something. And we make fun of him wanting to bust out his contractor's license and build something. But really, isn't that what we've done, right? We believe in a glorified Christ, and here we are in a building, right, to celebrate that. And we have pictures. And, maybe that was Peter's idea first. Maybe he was a pioneer in church building. This Christmas, will we receive the gift of the Christ child, the gift of the glorified Christ on the mountaintop, and the gift of eyes to see? To see that God is with us in the dark cave where no baby belongs, but God showed up. To believe that God is with us, even on a symbol of a pagan worship site, God shows up in low places and in high places. We see that our truest story is glory. Can we pray for the eyes of Jesus? Because Jesus saw glory in lots of places. The world would look and see the least of these, and Jesus said, no, that's my brother. And what you do for the least of these, you do for me. This glorified Christ of the manger and the mountaintop, when others saw little pests who were underage and annoying and in the way and too young to get it, Jesus saw heaven's best ambassadors. And when others saw a half-breed heretic with a string of broken marriages, Jesus saw a woman living in Samaria, worshiping God on the mountain, thirsty for truth just like he was. Others saw a sex worker making inappropriate public displays of affection, and Jesus saw a heroic worshiper pouring out perfume and her broken heart in the safe place that she'd found at his feet. And we may see disciples, we may see fellow members of our church, fellow Christians, fumbling and bumbling and making a mess of things. And yet Jesus sees disciples and disciples who he said would do even greater things than he did. Do you see what I see? Asks the mighty King, Jesus. And if our mighty King were here to ask us, do you see what I see? What would we answer? How would we respond to our mighty King? Well, if you're going to be honest, you're probably going to respond to that question with, well, it depends who I'm looking at. It's easy to see the glory of God in certain people, right? Jesus, again, we know what we know. We know that when we look at a manger, we think, oh, Jesus, Son of God. We know that when we see Mount of Transfiguration, yeah, of course, glorified Jesus. We're going to look at some more images, and some of them are going to be real easy to see the glory of God. Some of them, you'll have a different experience. Baby Jesus, of course, glory of God. Another picture. The one we're so familiar with. Maybe a shepherd would have only seen a colleague, right? Or a fellow, or a competition. But we see the Good Shepherd, right? God. At a baptism, some people would see maybe a member of a fanatical Essene cult who hears voices. We see Jesus receiving the word from his Father, knowing who he is. And on the mountaintop, some would see, I don't know what, a crazy rabbi walking away with some of his inner circle, and we see the glorified Christ. So we see clearly the glory of God in these things, right? Hard to do? Not for Christians, right? Because that's where we're at. There's other images, though, that might be different. So let's look at some of these. President Nixon, right? Do we see the glory of God? President Clinton. Harder, maybe? President Trump. Three men who were leaders of our country, are leaders of our country, and faced impeachment, right? How do we feel? Probably different feelings for different presidents, different people in our midst. Can I see the glory of God there? What else? This man's name is Biggie Smalls. He died tragically, and for many, he was a symbol of hope. Some of us might have certain things get in the way. As you look at that, what gets in the way for you of seeing the glorious child of God that this human being is? What might make it harder to see the glory of God in this face for you? Just notice for you, what comes up? What glorious child of God? Daughter of heaven? Yes. Is that our immediate emotional response? Maybe, maybe not. For some people, seeing a police officer as a symbol of like safety and security, protection and strength. Many of us have had the privilege of having great interactions with police officers and worked with some of the best police officers. Some people have had different experiences with law enforcement. No matter what our experience with law enforcement is, when we see this in our rearview mirror, we're not thinking, behold, the glory of God shines round about us. No, we are so afraid. Because that represents a problem, and the man driving the car is part of the problem. We don't see the glory of God manifest through the person behind the wheel of that car, even if we're pro-police, right? So, Jesus, glory of God. Jesus, brothers and sisters, glory of God. Here's where I need the miracle. Here's where I need the miracle in these eyes, in these ears, in this heart. This week, I talked with some people who really opened my eyes. One was a set of students who had gotten upset with each other over one joke and one dirty look. And we had parents and kids all in the room together. And the very first thing we had to get clear was the people are not the problem. The problem is the problem. Because what comes most naturally to humans who are confused and afraid and taking care of ourselves is that person's the problem. And once the people were able in that room to let go and realize, you know what, we're all just people. The problem's the problem. We're going to work on that together. And I was so inspired with what they did in the conversation with that. I talked to a cafeteria worker. I thought it was going to be for about 5 minutes. For a long time, I saw her as a distraction from my to-do list. And then I was like, you know what? Just lean in. Just sit down with this woman because she is so wise. She told me the story of this student who had been like, he came in and he jumped up on the table and he wanted to throw some food. And she looked at him and, I would think, what a problem. I want to yell at him. And what she told me is, I guess he just needed to be seen. And she saw him. And as she saw him and engaged him and spoke to him as a person, not as a problem, his behavior shifted to where he was very respectful over the course of time. I talked to a woman yesterday who was cutting my hair. First haircut in 2 years. You guys should feel special. I should put wrapping paper on my hair. Her name was Hope. And I was like, that's a strong name, like Hope. And she said, yeah, when I was in my mother's womb, my mother needed hope in her life. And she decided that what was inside her was hope. Isn't that a great shift of vision? I had a moment like this when I was running. I've run underneath this tree so many times, but I was running under the tree. I never noticed it before. And suddenly when I was running, the wind was just blowing softly through the tree. And for the first time I experienced the tree. It's like the Holy Spirit wind was blowing through the leaves and it just sang over and around me as I ran underneath. And I saw the glory of that tree in a way I had never seen it before. This Christmas, I just challenge you to keep your eyes open, keep your heart open for the miracle of God's revelation, for the miracle of eyesight, that we could see what He sees. I want to show you a brief video from a 20-minute film that you should watch in its entirety. It's called The Butterfly Circus, and it speaks to how we can see and what we can miss.
Oh. And now, ladies and gentlemen, gather in. A perversion of nature. A man, if you could even call him that, whom God himself has turned his back upon. I give you the limbless man.
Look at that. Look at
Move along, kids.
You are magnificent.
Hey, get away from him!
What's the matter with you?
It's all right. No harm in it. My fault. Maybe I got a little too close. Eh, friend?
You have a good evening now.
And we'll leave it there. And yes, you should go see the rest of it this afternoon. It's on YouTube. You are magnificent. God asks, do you see what I see? Do you see the divinity in the manger? Do you see what Peter and James and John woke up to see? And will we wake up to see what God sees in us? Will we see it in each other? In the people in high places who make mistakes? In the people in low places that we don't notice and we don't even see at all? Will we see it in the mirror? Because that's where we so often get stuck, isn't it? So often, if I'm going to judge you, it's because I still haven't forgiven myself. I still haven't received the forgiveness of God for myself about something, and so I need to somehow see the gnat in your eye, see the speck in your eye, because I still haven't taken that beam of unforgiveness out of my own eye. The manger, the mountaintop, the mirror. I pray that this Christmas, more than ever before, we'll receive the gift of eyes to see what God sees in his whole creation. Merry Christmas.
Love incarnate, love divine, star and angels gave the sign. Bow to babe on bended knee, the Savior of humanity. Unto us a child is born, he shall reign forevermore. Noel, Noel, come and see what God has done. Noel, Noel, the story of a maiden God and Son of Man, there before the world began. Born to suffer, born to save, born to raise us from the grave. Christ the everlasting Lord, he shall reign forevermore. Noel, Noel, come and see what God has done. Noel, Noel, the story of amazing love, the light of the world given for us. He shall reign forevermore.
Will you pray with me? Lord God of the manger and the mountain, give us eyes to see you, give us ears to hear you, a heart to be open to you, and all the ways that you show up in our brothers and our sisters and our planet. May we see your glory, may we see your magnificence, may we name it, may we hear your question, do you see what I see? And may we answer yes. In your holy name, amen.